First off, just thanks for listening to the AfterWord. It's encouraging to have a listener to the AfterWord. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
And welcome. Welcome to the AfterWord. This is a podcast we try to do weekly. We want
Try to do.
to,
We do it. We do
well,
it
there's
weekly.
some weeks that we don't.
Really?
So I had to say try.
Name the week.
Holidays.
Christmas.
What holiday?
Christmas. Oh, yeah. See?
And
There
New
we-
Year's Day.
But today's a holiday. And we've chosen to do it. We're working for you, our listener, on a holiday. A very important holiday.
To celebrate our presidents.
To celebrate our...
Okay, a quick fact about this. I didn't know about President's Day. I read this on the news this morning. It originally was celebrating George Washington's birthday, which I think is February 22 or something, but that changes day of the week every year, right? And so back in Lyndon B. Johnson, I believe, LBJ, he did a proclamation that was called something like, we're putting all the holidays together, or something like, it wasn't called that, but something
Putting on the
like-
Ritz. Did
Yeah.
he put on the Ritz?
So that federal workers could get 5 3-day weekends a year. And so they decided to make President's Day on the third Monday of February. So no longer is it George Washington's birthday, but Lincoln was also born in February. So they think it just happened to become President's Day because there are several in February, and no longer was it tied to Washington's birthday. So you're welcome.
Wow, that's good stuff.
Yeah, that is.
Thanks
You
for
might wanna
listening to
cut
the
that out.
AfterWord,
Yeah,
everyone.
you can cut that
That's
out.
it.
Can you also give me the history of Arbor Day while we're at it?
Trees. I don't know. So the real reason for this podcast is we want to look at more layers of the text that was just preached, ask some questions, some practical questions, and also see God's glory in the text, because we're going to see that in every text that we go through. I am Eric, joined by Betty and Vince and Kirsten, and here is our intro question to get things going. What is your go-to exercise? Or if you don't intentionally exercise, what is your go-to activity?
One time we had a bunch of people over and you got on a pogo stick.
I think that was the last time.
Do
Yeah.
you remember that?
Yeah, my face remembers that.
Uh-huh. You went down hard.
It was a pogo stick for, I think, like 6-year-old
yeah.
and under.
Yeah.
And Eric did it, and
Eric
man.
tried it, and it like flipped out from beside him, and he went face
I don't
down.
remember how many jumps I got. It wasn't a lot.
Not,
No, it wasn't.
you got a jump, and the whole thing, it was like there was no spring to it because I think you exceeded
You
the
remember
weight
that?
limit by like
Yeah, I remember
100
that.
pounds.
That was years ago, but it was funny.
A 6'3", one whatever guy, 180 guy was not made for that pogo stick.
It was funny though.
So
it was
my-
made for our humor.
My go-to activity is not pogo sticking.
Okay, sorry to
At least
interrupt.
not on a child's pogo stick.
Yeah.
Maybe you could try adult pogo sticking sometime.
I bet they do make those.
They do.
Oh, they for sure do. And you could do like extreme pogo sticking and like
Really?
jump off of walls
Yeah.
or something.
Oh, wow.
And if you had an
Parkour.
activity jacket, you could do it all
Parkour
winter long.
pogo.
I have the jacket, so we're good to go. Okay, so what's your go-to exercise?
What's yours?
I don't really...
How did you get to the recording studios today?
Yes, I'll ride my bike. I get some cardio riding my bike. Here's my philosophy on exercise. I don't want to do it if that's the reason why I'm doing it, but if I can do it and accomplish something else while I do it, so riding a bike, I'm getting somewhere else I already have to go. So then I'll do it. But I'm probably not just going to go...
For a bike ride.
For a run or something because I just know I need the exercise. It's not great, but that's my philosophy.
It's not a good answer, but it's an answer. All right.
I know what yours is, Vince.
Yep. Pogo sticking. Yeah, running. I love it.
What kind of running?
Currently, I'll do anything, but I love trail running. The further up and into the mountains I can get, the better.
How many times do you fall? Is it every time you go out,
No.
or is it once every 3 times, or what is it?
It's becoming less, but I'm pretty timid on the downhill because I never fall uphill. I always fall downhill, and there's a lot further to fall when you fall downhill, and it's harder to catch.
Physics, man.
Often you
Yeah.
catch it with something you don't want to catch it, like a knee or a side or something. So
Mine's cycling. We got trail running. Kirsten?
I tend to just walk.
Oh, I love walking.
Nothing exciting, but I walk. And I also lift weights. I don't really enjoy lifting weights, but I know that I'm getting older and rapidly losing muscle mass. So
I just saw another news article that said that women are, like 80% of women are under-muscled.
Oh, yeah.
So that goes to prove your point. It's good to be lifting.
I'm
It
sure
is.
I'm under muscled.
I'm going to stop with news articles.
I may be a part of that 80%,
Yeah.
and I'm not even a woman.
Okay, so walking, some cycling if it means that I can hit 2 birds with 1 stone. Trail running. What about you, Betty?
Oh, here we go. This is going to be good.
Well, I've been trying to run, but I wouldn't say that's like my enjoyable activity. But I would say dancing. Like last year,
Really?
I used to go to Sundance every Wednesday night, and we'd like swing and line
What's
dance.
Sundance?
Yeah, explain that.
It's like a swing and line dancing country western place in Fort Collins.
It's over by where I live. It's like Timberline and Mulberry.
Yeah.
Huh. Should we?
You want to go?
Yeah, should
Yeah,
we
let's
go?
all go.
Let's do this.
But I would do that, and the line dances really take it out of you.
Really?
Last night, the youth girls and I were doing line dances, and I stayed late just to do Cotton Eye Joe with one girl, and it's tiring.
Huh.
Break a sweat.
I also remember a time we had a party years ago and we were all dancing, but Eric was not dancing.
Yeah, that's not my go-to.
So I don't think
for
you're going to
sure.
go to Sundance unless you could ride your bike there.
I could
If you
ride my
could
bike
ride your bike to
there.
Sundance and then line dance.
On a pogo stick.
on a pogo stick.
That'd be.
Try that.
I would pay lots of money to see all of that happen.
Listener, if you're still with us, thank you for still being with us. Let's transition to the text. We had 1 Samuel chapters 5, 6, and 7. Yep, 3 chapters in one Sunday. So, Vince, give us the recap, but it's going to have to be pretty quick. It's 3 chapters.
All right, so remember the Philistines have stolen the ark. They have taken it from Shiloh. And so in these chapters, we see the Philistines passing the ark from city to city. And as they do that, God's hand is heavy against them, inflicting them with tumors, inflicting them with, it doesn't say this, but I think we can assume that the mice are ravaging their fields, and that's from God. Again, we don't see that as directly from God, but they experience all of these things as the heavy hand of God against them. And so they're trying to figure out, how do we get rid of this thing? So they decide to get together their religious officials. They make a plan to send the ark away on a cart pulled by milk cows. And they have this whole system set up. If the cows go this way, it means one thing. If the cows go another way, it means another thing. And so they're sort of teasing out this, is God over this? How are we going to know? This is how we'll know. And so they send the milk cows away with the cart, trying to get the ark back to the Israelites. They want to get rid of it once and for all. The milk cows go exactly where, from our perspective, where God leads them, back to the people of God who are in the field, harvesting their wheat, and they take the ark of the covenant of God off the cart with a gift from the Philistines, a very great gift, a box full of golden mice and golden tumors. They take those things off of the cart, put them on a rock, and they sacrifice the 2 cows. The cows' job was very important. Somebody asked me yesterday, how would you feel if you were the cows? Like, your job was to go to this place. You went exactly where God wanted you to go, and then your outcome was death. Anyway, so they were sacrificed to God as an offering. And 70 men, we're told, die as they look at the ark, probably in an unworthy manner. So we're not told what that is, but they look at it in a way that was not pleasing to God. They are struck dead. And so the people of Israel, God's people, begin to think, okay, how do we get rid of this thing? Because it's causing harm to us as well, even though it is the presence of God near them. And so they send the ark off to another location further out where it's received from them. Samuel, we're told, judges the people. It takes on the role of the priest for the people, offering sacrifices, praying to God for their safety, and they defeat the Philistines in battle as that happens. That's where I'll stop.
So all through this, you pointed this out yesterday, we see the hand of God. And you gave your big idea. I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, though.
With the Lord, there is no coincidence.
Yeah. Yeah. So hammered over and over again that none of this is by coincidence with what we're reading here. But the Lord is active behind all of it.
Yeah.
A couple questions for clarification from this text before we get into some other questions. One, we didn't talk about this earlier. Did you run across anything about it being 70 men or like 50,000? There's a footnote in my Bible. I'm assuming others too.
Yeah, I mean, there's debate back and forth. I mean, the same thing happened last week whenever it said they lost 4,000 men, and then the next time they lost 30,000 men. The numbering starts to get, it's translated in different ways in different places. And so because of the differing opinions on how it's translated, I often go with what's written clearly in our English text, because there's a lot of study that's gone behind that, and they go with what the primary sources are saying. So
Okay.
So there's the answer, no answer.
Yeah. There's debate over it, right?
Yep.
A couple questions. One question was sent in to us. By the way, if there are questions from the text that you're curious that maybe we could hit on the podcast, email them to us, info@thetownchurch.org, and if we can talk about it, we'd love to do that. Hopefully this isn't just a one-way thing. We can hear from you all too, our one listener, I mean. Mm-hmm. So Vince, here's the question. Why didn't the ark go back to Shiloh? Why did it end up going anywhere but Shiloh?
Yeah, we don't have any clear evidence, at least clear biblical evidence. There's different scholars who say different things about why it didn't go back to Shiloh. That's where it was. One of the pieces that I read was that it went to Kiriath Jearim. They had it sent there, and that was just a few miles away in a place that bordered several of the different tribes. So it was a very convenient place for it to go, that it bordered several of the different tribes. Kirsten was looking up some information earlier on biblical archaeology, which I'm sure you all of our listeners are well versed in. But there's some studies that show that Shiloh was potentially destroyed by the Philistines when they took the ark. So it's no more, is one thought, that it wouldn't have gone back to Shiloh because there's nothing for it to go back to. So we don't have any clear biblical evidence of why it didn't go back to Shiloh. The end.
Thanks. Here's another question also. It says at the end of chapter 7 that Samuel is now a judge over Israel. He kind of made this circuit, judging. What did that mean that he was a judge? What sort of things did he do?
Yeah, it was similar to what the judge's role was from what we see in the book of Judges. The judge's role was to be, in some ways, a mouthpiece from God to bring reprieve to the people, to bring some relief to the people from the oppression of the enemies that was all around them. And so Samuel was this bridge between the judges that we see in the book of Judges to the kings who are coming, and he stood in as a bridge in all kinds of ways. We see him as a priest. He mediates between the people and God. He's a prophet. We clearly see that he prophesies over to Eli about the death of his sons from God. He's a mouthpiece there. And he's also a judge. So he's going from place to place, city to city, bringing relief, bringing peace to a people who have felt the oppression of the Philistines and others. So he's a bridge. He's a
hybrid of sorts.
Yep.
Is this in an end of your study? Did you see if this is significantly different than what Eli's role is, or was it pretty similar to what Eli's role was?
Yeah, I mean, it's different in that he wasn't in the line of priests. He was acting. He was mediating. He became a leader. I mean, he was a leader for the people. And we see that. So people were going to him for these things. I didn't see any, in my study, anything that says that he was now officially the priest, but people saw him that way. It's clear, we'll get to it in the next chapter 8 and following, it's clear that God used him in that way as one who would mediate for the people, who would go after the next kings and choose the next kings. But there's no official role that he's taken on.
Right. I want to ask.
Do you like how all of my answers are I don't know, but I make them longer so it seems like I've done a lot of study.
We don't know, but here's some assumptions, right?
That's right.
Our speculation. Here's a personal question. I want to turn it a little bit. I want to hear from Betty and Kirsten too. Was there anything from this text that pushed on you personally? Anything that maybe sense the Spirit pushing on in you, either encouraging or convicting, or something you want to linger over?
I think for me, in chapter 6, verse 19, when God struck down the men of Beth Shemesh because they looked upon the ark. I think, and then further on in this chapter, there's a section where the ark starts to stumble and some men try to stabilize it, and God strikes them dead for touching it. And those types of passages are ones that are difficult for me because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of mercy from God. It just seems like he's very quick to bring judgment.
Don't touch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't know the hearts of the men at that time. And I think where I have to land is that I just don't actually understand or comprehend the holiness of God and the offense that this must have been to him. And so I know that God is not a God who reacts. Like he's not one that will just react quickly. He's one that responds intentionally. And so considering the character of God, I know what's true, but I think this section, it's hard because it seems like there's a lack of mercy there.
I think I was really struck by the Philistines' whole plan to send the ark back, and how it was kind of set up in a certain way of expecting the cows to like come back. But it's like, if it's this thing, then it means this. If it's this thing, then it means this. And I think I just thought of times where I know I've done like things exactly like that, trying to like manipulate this certain expectation or like desired outcome in a situation. And then even when it happens, like either the way I want or the way I don't, I'm like, that doesn't really make sense. I don't know. I just think I do stuff like that a lot. And just, I can think of very specific instances in which I've done that. And like some things in journals that I like look back on that are very much like that.
In some ways, yeah, we're looking, I think we've all done it, so you're not alone there. We're looking for some very clear affirmation. We want to know, is this truly of God? And so we want some clear affirmation, and when we're unable to see that clear affirmation, we fabricate it. It's the whole fleece thing from Gideon, where if this happens, then therefore it must have been from God. And these are people who don't, the Philistines are people who don't know God. So what else? And that's the way their gods respond. If we do this, it's this karma relationship. If we do this, God must respond in this way. But I think we all do that. That's something that hits me too. I think whether we say it like that or not, we all have that in us of like, we do this, therefore it must have meant that God was doing this. We had a good conversation in our township this last week about how God speaks, how we hear him speak, or how we know it's him. And we all desire to hear God speaking. But how do we know it's him? And so if we put this out there, will we know then for sure that it's him? Yeah.
I feel like sometimes I even like see that affirmation I was looking for. I'm like, oh, that probably wasn't God. Like, that's not what I was actually looking for or thought would happen. So it's hard.
Well, and it's interesting because the Philistines, even though God did exactly what they set out, the cows went the exact direction that they were thinking, they still didn't turn around and recognize that it was God. That God had given them opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to, his power was on display. Their God was face down, worshiping God. And the irony of the fact that they had to physically pick their God up and put him upright. There's a lot of irony there. And then beyond that, there's mercy in that God struck them with tumors and with mice and trying to reveal himself to them and saying, I'm a powerful God, and then beyond that, he shows them, okay, I'm over the cows and their natural instincts. Like they would naturally be drawn back to their babies. They would naturally go towards their children, and yet they go the opposite direction. And so God is revealing his power to them over and over, and they still don't recognize him as God.
That's one of the things I forgot in the recap, the whole thing about Dagon and how they bring in the ark, the Philistines bring in the ark and put it next to their God, thinking, we'll just add to our already growing list of gods and see how this goes. And it's clear that God is not for that. He won't stand for other gods being put in his place without there being some sort of response from him to bring about his power.
Well, and they double down on their worship. And so it's not that they recognize that God is stronger than Dagon. They actually add more tradition into their worship and saying, well, now we always have to jump over the threshold. And so they don't even recognize that it's God, but it just causes them to double down even more into their false worship.
Yeah, instead of it being more hoops to jump through, it's more thresholds to jump over. Yeah, is that clever?
No.
No? It does raise a question, though. The recap that you just gave, Kirsten, of the Philistines' experience with the ark, it seems like it begs the question, do we have eyes to see what God is doing or showing us today, right? Because it was really clear over and over and over again, odd things are happening. And it's not coincidence. God's hand is behind all of it. And it seemed like, at least to some extent, they were not picking that up.
Yeah, and I think we have to remember, it's easy for us from the outside to read this and think through those kinds of things. I think we have to remember a couple things. One, these are people who are polytheistic, and they have this relationship with a system of gods. And so for us to put onto them this category of how could they not see it, I think is maybe unfair. It's okay to be unfair to the Philistines, but is unfair because why would they do anything else other than think that there was a multitude of gods out there helping them in some way, and that's how they treat this relationship. We do this, you do this. So I think we have to remember that. I think we also have to remember that we now have the Spirit, and the Spirit is teaching us all things about Jesus, directing us, guiding us, leading us. And so we're able to see, I think, with different eyes than what they were seeing. They didn't have the Spirit. And I'm not saying they didn't have the Spirit because the Spirit wasn't around. They were not followers of God. They had no desire to see God like we do. And those who have been chosen by God have the Spirit. And so we see things in a different way. Not that any of us are neglecting to see that, but I think we have to constantly remember that our perspective on this is very different than their perspective was.
Yeah, but we also see in the Israelites too, don't we?
Yeah.
And the meta-narrative, the things that they have to learn over and over, and often within the same generation, over and over and over.
I think really what I'm trying to say is, and this is a campaign that I'm on this year, is let's give the Philistines some grace.
That's the campaign you're on this year?
Yeah, I really want to start a new movement of more grace for the Philistines.
You're just so gracious.
I'm getting shirts made.
Yeah.
More grace for the Philistines.
One thing that pushed on me, this is maybe less of a conviction, but I'm seeing this throughout this book so far. God is breaking categories over and over and over. Like, things that I would expect to happen, he doesn't do. It doesn't operate in the ways that I would want him to operate. And so to the point of God being behind this, what was your second point yesterday, Vince? The hand of the Lord
is for his glory.
Is for his glory, and we see it in all things. And so he's doing all of this to be known to a greater degree, right? This is part of his glory. We know who he is. That it gives him glory. So to be known. And he'll do anything. Like, that's his highest value. His highest value isn't the health of the Philistines. His highest value isn't the Israelites winning every military battle. His highest value isn't keeping everybody alive. We see judgment on that over and over again. His highest value is being known for who he truly is. And so that pushes me to hopefully hold things a little less tightly, maybe to some degree. Like, because my values aren't that often. My values are not God's glory. It's not my top, or him to be known, or for me just to know him more. So when my values misalign with his, I mean, there's going to be some conflict there, right? And so maybe the prayer for me is that God would, in my heart, align what I value most more with him. I mean, of course, that sounds really Christianese, but that's something that I think I'm seeing in this context.
Yeah, I agree. And I tried to say this yesterday. Those first 2 points of my sermon, that God's hand is against his enemies and God's hand is for his glory, I think we would all agree with that. Mm-hmm. Say, yes, of course, we see that all over Scripture. We know that's true. But it doesn't, for me personally, it doesn't woo me to God. It ought to to know that God is against his enemies and that God is absolutely for his glory, that ought to rouse in me affections for him. But it doesn't often because it doesn't feel personal. In fact, at times it feels impersonal, that God is for his glory and he's going to get his glory no matter what, even if it means some of the things I have to walk through are really challenging. It can feel really impersonal. And so that's why I think chapter 7 is helpful, and other places in Scripture, chapter 7 is helpful to bring in this, like, God is for us too. He's absolutely for us.
A personal God.
Personal God. He's
intimate
near
God.
us. He hears when we pray. He hears us and he answers, and so often gives us good gifts, and he's near us and desires to be near us. I think to not have that peace, that's why all 3 of these chapters have been grouped together when we walk through them. To not have that peace, I think, is really hard just to land on this. God's going to conquer his enemies, and he's doing all things for his glory, the end. That feels really impersonal and hard
It's
to
not
grab.
well-rounded enough.
I think we can also see that God is also going to give us what we need in order to give him glory. And so we see that with the cows and the cart, that the Philistines were the ones who sent the cows and the cart, and the cart was the thing that the Israelites used to make fire, and they sacrificed the cows. And so God is going to get glory, and he gave the Israelites exactly what they needed in order to worship him, in order to sacrifice him in the way that he had set up for them to do it. And so, I think it's easy for us it does feel very impersonal at times to say that God is going to get his glory no matter what. And at the same time, remembering that when we are in these difficult places, God gives us what we need in order to give glory to him.
It's still a caring God and a personal God. I had a thought, I just completely lost it. Probably that's the Spirit at work right now.
The Spirit at work squelching your thought.
Yeah.
I wish he would do that more for me. Or I wish I would obey more when that happens and not say it.
Thinking pragmatically, it works. We see it. In chapter 7, the ark is now 20 years in Kiriath Jearim, and the people are now lamenting their sin.
Yeah.
There's been a change of heart in the people of Israel. And then the rest of chapter 7 with Samuel now taking over, and we see hearts starting to turn back. And when the Philistines gather to go to war again, the Israelites are responding very differently than they did back in chapter 4, where they just tried to eat. Well, first of all, not even seek God's help, and then secondly, trying to use the ark as a magic kind of tool is one way to look at it. Anyway, they don't do that here.
Yeah,
seems like they're learning their lesson.
Yeah, in fact, they ask Samuel to pray for them.
Yeah.
And he offers sacrifices to the Lord, appropriate sacrifices to the Lord on their behalf. And we're told that God answers, and they defeat the Philistines. So there is a heart turning. I think it's a beautiful part of these 3 chapters that, Samuel says, if you do want to turn back to the Lord, here's what that looks like. And the people don't say, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe that's not. They respond. They repent and turn back. There's a beautiful turning. But here's the encouragement. Sorry, I'm going to jump.
Go ahead.
Here's the encouragement. I think for us, I think we often see that as an instant, something that has to happen instantly.
The turning?
You're in sin. You should repent. We're told it's 20 years.
Yeah.
It's a long battle of returning. And so I think we often have this mindset of, if you're in sin, you must repent and it must be immediate. If not, there's no grace for you. But there's this long journey of the people learning to trust in God, learning to turn from their sin, learning to see Samuel as a godly leader because their experience is ungodly leaders. And it's a process. I think we all too often don't have patience for the process.
Well, and I think we see a picture of the process, because when the Philistines sent the ark to Beth Shemesh, the people were confronted with the holiness of God. They were confronted with it, and they didn't actually want the holiness of God. And so they sent it away to Kiriath Jearim, and then it was 20 years. And so in that process, it was them being confronted with the holiness of God, a whole slew of men being killed, struck down with a great blow. It says, they said, who is able to stand before the Lord, this holy God? And they sent him away because when they were confronted with the holiness, they didn't want it there. And then over the course of 20 years, it shifted that now they're recognizing the holiness of God to the point that when they're in battle now, it's not that they're just wanting the religious relic of God, but they actually know that they need his presence with him. So the presence they sent away was now the presence that they're actually realizing this is our only hope.
I think it's really good to be reminded that it is a process. In our study in James yesterday, I was sharing about how like verse 121, when it says like put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness, is really hard for me because in my mind I read that I'm like, so I have to like immediately be able to just like put this thing away. But then to be reminded that this is a process that we're walking through, we're being sanctified like as the years pass. And this is 20 years right here. That's like my whole life. And so just to think that some of these things like really take so much time to like be refined.
So those two battles, for example, where we see Israel respond so differently, we're talking 20 plus years from the original battle to when they responded differently. That means that if I had that battle today, I'd be 63 with God working on me. I'm 63. I react differently when I'm faced with that again. It certainly puts it in perspective, doesn't it? It's not just two chapters. I mean, they're right. They're next to each other in our Bibles, but there's a lot of time that's gone by. This is a long game. Shaping our hearts takes time.
You think you're gonna make it to 63?
Man, I don't know. Not this pace.
With your lack of exercise and your
I
pogo
cycle
sticking.
once in a while.
You ride your bike once every 2.5 months.
I'm not gonna pogo stick anymore. That just added another 10 years of my life.
Took away.
Yeah. So let's get back to this idea of coincidence, which was the big idea throughout these three chapters from the text yesterday. Do you tend to think things are coincidence in your normal life, or do you tend to see God behind things, or somewhere mixed?
I tend to see God behind things. I think I try to look for how God was in action in lots of little ways. I think it's the only way I've maybe been able to endure the last couple of years is seeing that those things that might be coincidences, actually just naming them as the kindness of God.
Yeah, I do.
What?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I knew what I meant. I do tend to see God in all of the things. I don't. I mean, I think there are times when I think, oh, that was a coincidence. I don't know. I think I say that more as an idiom, or as a way to say something, less as a belief system. I don't actually believe that it is that way, although I've said that. I do see God as over everything. I tend to wonder how much he cares about some of the things. For instance, like, oh, there's a parking spot right next to the place that I was going to go. That's not that's from God. I see it clearly. I should go here. So there are ditches on both sides where you have to see, yeah, he is over everything and he knows everything. So whether or not that parking spot was there because God was trying to tell me I should go to that store is different than saying and believing God knew that parking spot would be there. He absolutely knew that spot would be there and be open. But is he trying to speak to me in some way is a different question. So does that make sense? I don't see anything truly as coincidence. God is over everything and knows all things. I want to be careful, and maybe to my own fault at times, I want to be careful not to put meaning to everything that I think there's meaning there from God.
Like that leaf rustled in just such a way, so that's God telling me this and that.
Yeah.
I think what it can do, though, is that it can foster obedience and gratitude in us. And so, it's not that God opened up that parking spot and that was a something that the Lord ordained necessarily. And yet what it can be is me saying, God, thanks for this parking spot. It's really convenient. It's really close. I'm thankful. And so it may not be about the parking spot at all, but it may be something that God uses to shape our hearts towards gratitude, towards acknowledging, that there was a kindness there in that. And so causing us to praise him because we have these things that happen.
I think it's a growing process for me to really see like the full reality of like the Lord's sovereignty. And I think sometimes too, when I like say that was a coincidence, just like because people say that, I start to like wonder, do I start to believe that more because I like keep saying that and like am wrestling with like, do I believe in coincidences or like see the sovereignty of God? But I know that he is sovereign over all things. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think just sometimes like language can like cause my mind to start to shift a certain way if I like repeat it enough, or it just becomes like a natural thing that I say. So even being more intentional in that could probably help like my mind and heart. And maybe that's a dumb question. Never mind.
Oh, there's no such thing.
You said last night that there is.
There are dumb questions, but we would let you know if it was dumb.
Can like thinking of coincidences be like related to like superstition or those like different?
I think it could be, and I think we see that in the Philistines, but again, they didn't know God. So again, back to my campaign, let's give grace to the Philistines.
You need to have some sort of catchy motto or logo or something like
grace for the Philistines.
Is that what it's going to be?
Yeah.
That's catchy.
That's catchy.
It's catchy.
GFTP.
Now my mind went sideways. What are we talking about?
Superstitions.
Oh yeah. No, I mean I think we see that of them. They say if the cows go this way, then certainly God was against us. If they go this way, then it was coincidence. So I think theirs is a superstitious karma. We do this, God will do this sort of thing. I think you're right though, Betty. I do see it as a language. I think you're absolutely right. When we say things, the more and more we say things, I think we do believe them. Now, don't hear me say, like, if you speak it enough, you'll grow to believe it.
You're manifesting.
Yeah, you're manifesting. I don't mean that. But I do think our vocabulary changes the way we think. If we're consistently saying, wow, what a coincidence, I think we do begin to believe those things that way and just begin to see that God's not really active. It was just coincidental. So maybe to say, wow, that was coincidental. I wonder what God has there for me. Changes what we are believing.
Yeah, I think it's also good for us to mention that there is some mystery around how our actions, thought patterns, decisions, and God's sovereignty, how all that works out. We are still clearly responsible for our actions and our sin. The Bible's super clear on that. The Bible is also super clear that God is completely sovereign and in control of everything. Yeah. Exactly how those two things work together, I'm not entirely certain.
Yeah. This just came to mind, a little test here. Would any of us say chapters 5, 6, and 7, there's anything in those chapters that God wasn't a part of? Did that make sense? Let me rephrase it so there weren't double negatives in there. As we look at those chapters, is God a part of everything that's in them?
By part, do you mean like dictating, influencing, just somehow?
Was there anything that happened? Were there any events in these chapters that God did not have his hand in some way?
No.
I would agree. I think we would all say that as we read it. For some reason, I think we sometimes think differently about our own lives.
Yeah.
That we have this perspective of, wow, that was weird, or what a coincidence. But we're able to read these chapters and say God was actively present in all of those things. So I wonder why. There's the question.
Yeah, I think one thing that this has been pushing on to me, for example, we live in Fort Collins. Trains go through this town a lot. So when I get stuck at a train, rather than being upset that I didn't beat it, like God's sovereign over that too, right? And so what does he have for me in those 3 minutes or something? I'm going to be sitting in my car. Or I go get groceries on Friday mornings. I like to think that's just my decision, and everything that I do is just because I want to do it on Friday mornings for lots of reasons, but God's still sovereign over that too. So what might God have for me as I'm walking down the aisles of a grocery store? Not to hyper-spiritualize and say, like, everything is some sort of sign from God of how I'm supposed to live that day. But at the same time, don't fall in the other ditch either. Like God is still present. He's still active. And I guess maybe the push is this. Is my heart open or my eyes open to see what God might have for me in those times? And not assume that he's somehow absent.
That's right.
I think, though, that gets really hard when we're going through really difficult things and when we're suffering, because the idea that God is actively involved in our suffering, allowing it or purposing it, especially in seasons that we don't understand what's going on and we can see no good that would come from it. I think that's when it gets harder, because it's easier to think, well, I just live in a fallen world, or these are the effects of sin. But to know that God has allowed suffering or purposed suffering for some reason, and he's actively involved in it, like that's really hard for the believer to understand and to reconcile.
Mm-hmm.
Deep thoughts.
I think we just reconciled all of it. Just kidding.
One thing I didn't point out, I meant to do this earlier. So there's this, it's totally shifting gears. Did you have something else that you want to keep going with that?
No.
I think we see God's hand in this too, so I'll tie it together there. There is this interesting connection from chapter 7, verse 10. I think it's verse 10. It says, as Samuel was offering up the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near to attack Israel, but the Lord thundered with a mighty sound that day against the Philistines and threw them into confusion. For the person who remembers Hannah's prayer back in chapter 2, she says something very similar, that the Lord will thunder over his enemies. The same kind of language is used there. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth, give strength to his king. She talks about this thundering that is spoken there. So it's almost this prophetic word that she has in this prayer that shoots forward into what is happening now with Samuel, her son, who she gave up to God in commitment.
It's also interesting there in verse 10, you said, you talked about the thunder, but before that, it says the adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces. And it makes me think of Dagon. He was broken into pieces. And even before that, for not by might shall man prevail. And just considering, like, God knocked over Dagon, the Philistines had to pick up their God, physically pick up their God and put him back in place. And then he's knocked over again, and his hands and his head are the things that are removed. And I mean, hands would probably represent like strength or might. Head might represent like wisdom. And so it's, their God, all of might, everything has been cut off. And so God is above every bit of wisdom, every bit of strength, every bit of might, and that God was broken into pieces.
All right, that leads us right into the last question. What here in this text do you see that raises your affections for our good God?
I think for me, the cows.
Okay, Betty. Next.
No, I think about the cows, and I think about the fact that naturally they would go back to their young, but they go the opposite direction. And in my mind, it's this beautiful picture of how the cows go against what their natural inclination is, and then their lives are used as a sacrifice to God. And God provided everything that was needed to sacrifice and to glorify him. And so, he used these animals to put to shame people like Hophni and Phinehas, who carried the ark and brought it into battle really foolishly. And yet he uses these cows who go against their natural inclination to carry his ark back to his people. I don't know. God just uses dumb creatures for his glory, and then he provides everything that we need in order to glorify him. I don't know, the cows.
Yeah, an interesting little, as I thought about the cows, they are not used to being tied up like this, not used to being tied up to a cart. Have you ever tried to tie up something that doesn't, or put a leash on something that doesn't want a leash, even a dog or
Like
a puppy.
cat.
I used to
or
try
a
to put a
cat.
leash on my rabbit.
Right.
It
And
did
they
not go well.
nuts, right. They start pulling and shifting and trying to get out of that. I mean, that's these cows, but they went exactly where God led them to go. Anyway.
It is interesting because it reminds me a little bit of when God brought them out of Egypt. He loaded them down with what they needed to build the... Did they use that to build the ark? Or was that something different? I remember that they plundered the Egyptians.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the
God
Egyptians
sent them with,
willingly
the
gave them
gold.
everything,
Yeah.
and they used it to build the temple.
All
I
the
think.
tabernacle
Yes,
stuff.
yes. That's right. That's right. So this is a smaller scale, but somewhat similar. And we were talking about before the podcast, the Egyptians are referenced in this story a couple of times. There's definitely some interesting connections. Anyway, thank you, Kirsten. That does raise my affections for our good God. Cows.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else?
Similar to me, for me, I mean, it's all of these things. And you can probably see that coming out in the sermon that I preach, that there are all of these things that line up exactly as God had to have them line up for the events to happen. But it didn't just dump out into there's my glory. It dumped out into 20 years later, the people truly turning their hearts back to him. So there was a purpose that he led all of these things in the direction he did. It wasn't just to show them, I'm more powerful, but no, I'm a good God and Father, and your hearts are inclined back toward me.
For me, it's the mice. Just kidding. I was trying to say another animal.
The tumors. It was the tumors.
The golden tumors.
No, for me, I think it's just the reminder that like the Lord's hand is for his people. I think it's really hard for me sometimes to think of like the Lord's hand being for his glory and for his people, like in the same idea. And like as I've shared too in recent weeks, it's just been a harder season and a drier season for me. And I think it's easy to just kind of sit here and think like God isn't like with me within this, but just being reminded that like he is still like working for my good, but also ultimately for his glory, and just seeing those things like come together within this passage is really big for me.
Yep. I think moving out a little bit, that the ultimate result of these 20 years was the people's hearts turning back in repentance. So another way to think is that what we've seen in these chapters are God's mercy to his people. There's different ways that God's being gracious. It feels really hard, and they are hard things, but the ultimate end is for our good, which is just a good God. It wouldn't have to be that way, but that's how he operates, because he loves us.
Well, and you see mercy in that, like there is temporary suffering here, and yet the temporary, even if it's intense suffering that would draw someone back to God, is so much better than an eternity of separation with him. Yeah. And so seeing the mercy in that God is okay wounding people if it means drawing them back to him, because it's rescuing them from an eternity of separation.
Yep, that's good. All right, next, this coming Sunday, 1 Samuel chapter 8. So read ahead. Thank you for listening. We love you. Bye.
Bye.